If you watch your local news a few nights in a row, a pattern will begin to appear. Coverage will include delinquency, robberies, alcohol and substance abuse by adolescents. Now, what if one factor could change all of this? Research has found that the parent-child relationship can be a defining factor in affecting the children in all areas of their life. Sukyum Nung, in research conducted by him, found that the parent-child relationship can be a defining factor in mental health, identity, behavior, resilience, and academic achievement. We'll now look at 3 ways in which the parent-child relationship affects children. Through the parenting style they choose to use, through the amount of open communication taking place in the relationship, and the extent to which children are allowed in the decision-making process about their own lives. The parenting style that parents choose to use affects their children. In a study conducted by Chow, he found that the relationship is important because it is the earliest, longest, and most lasting relationship that most children will ever have. He also found that children perceived their parents to have different parenting approaches. Mothers were seen as more nurturing and caring, while fathers were perceived to be more authoritative and expect obedience with little question. Culture influenced Chow's research, and it influences parents and the children. For instance, Chow's research took place in China, where harmony is thought to be one of the most important virtues. Children in his study were more likely to compromise and consent than were the parents, which shows that the parents had imparted their culture onto their children. The children were showing their culture by wanting to embrace harmony in their own families. Similar to how the parenting styles affect children, the amount of open communication taking place affects children and adolescents. A lack of communication can have many negative effects. Kajurski, in a study conducted by Lois Kajurski, found that juvenile delinquency went up as open communication between the primary caregiver and the adolescent went down. And this is also bidirectional. For instance, as children and adolescents engaged in delinquent acts, the parenting went down, the amount of open communication went down, thus encouraging more delinquent acts, and vice versa. But if there is more open communication, this can have extremely positive effects. The amount of delinquency goes down. It can lead to academic success. This is especially true because emotional stability and support are better predictors of academic success than IQ. It can also lead to social success, especially for the underprivileged. As underprivileged children, they already, especially economically, they already have social disadvantages, and parents can curb some of these disadvantages by socializing them. Pickert found that as the importance of open communication, because as adolescents are not communicating with their parents, parents start speculating about things that they're doing while they're not with them, and the same goes as adolescents are not hearing that open communication from their parents, they start to believe that they're not being cared for and that their parents don't care about them. And while parenting styles and open communication both have an impact on the adults that children will become, there is another contributing factor, which is the extent to which children are allowed in the decision-making process about their own lives. This allowing children to be engaged in the decision-making process is especially important because not involving them has extremely negative effects. Children can grow into adolescents and adults with not fully formed prefrontal cortexes, which means that they will have trouble making their own decisions, they will have trouble prioritizing actions, regulating emotions, keeping goals in mind, all because of this lack of maturation in their prefrontal cortex. In a study conducted by Lin Zhao, He found that children that were not allowed in the decision-making process were more likely to engage in binge drinking as adolescents and were less able to make decisions and a lower capacity for decision-making as adults and adolescents. However, those children who were involved in the decision-making process had fully formed prefrontal cortexes, were able to do those things like prioritizing actions and keeping goals in mind. And this meant they engaged in binge drinking at a lower rate, and they had a much higher capacity for making decisions. Not only does each one of these entities act separately, they all work in conjunction with one another. For example, authoritarian parents have chosen that parenting style. They have closed communication in the relationship, and they demand obedience without question rather than engaging the child in the decision-making process. This parenting can lead to children and adolescents with low self-esteem, with higher rates of mental illness and depression, while in authoritative parents who are having that open communication and allowing children to make those decisions have children that grow into adults that are more responsible in society and who are able to make those decisions about their own lives. So, like I've discussed, the parent-child relationship is one of the most important factors in a child's life. The amount of open communication, the parenting style, the amount that children are allowed in the decision-making process, all contribute to who the child will become as an adult. Positive and healthy parent-child relationships could lead to more responsible adults in society, while these negative and unhealthy parent-child relationships can lead to just more substance abuse and delinquency. Like discussed in the beginning, what if we had more adults who were on the news for helping their communities rather than more shows of robberies and things like that? And it all could be changed with one factor, the parent-child relationship.